Welcome to the Empty the Bench Podcast Network's Best of 2024 video series, presented by Playback. While you break out your holiday traditions and enjoy the festivities, join us on a look back that was the year in sports in 2024. This is the Best of Empty the Bench 2024 Part 1 with Nick Morgasen and Tom Albano on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, welcome to part 1 of the Best of Empty the Bench for 2024, the best of ETV Sports. I'm Tom Albano, that's Nick Morgasen, your host on ETV Sports. As always, make sure to follow us across social media at ETV Sports on Twitter, aka X, Instagram, and TikTok. Same for at ETV Network, which is the social media for the network as a whole. Make sure to subscribe here on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/ETV Network. Hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here. Help us continue our climb upwards towards 1,000 subscribers. If you don't want to watch or can't watch on the video end, then make sure to listen to Empty the Bench wherever you take your podcasts, Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so much more. And of course, Empty the Bench and everything else here at the ETV Network is presented by Playback, who we have to give a special shout out to because they joined us. We had our partnership that started earlier this year and has continued on throughout the rest of 2024. Obviously, we're doing stuff with the 2024-25 NBA season now. On the MMA Outsiders front, myself, Zambano, and Pat Dana have been doing fight studies every month prior to UFC pay-per-views. Fun experience. So special shout out to them. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETV Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. All right. The reason we are here, of course, is we are in holiday mode here at the ETV Network. So you've got certain shows that are still going on, primarily the football shows. Everybody else, we're doing year-end reviews. And in the case of us here at ETV Sports, one of several shows that are doing best ofs. So the purpose of this show, which we have done now for several years at this point for the month of December, is to look back on the year that was. In 2024, plenty of ups, plenty of downs, plenty of low points, quiet points, and then there's plenty of drama. And while breaking the fourth wall here behind the scenes, nothing is figured out completely for part 2 by the time we're recording this. I can definitely say that part 2, kind of like last year, is probably going to have a lot of material when it comes to news segments, but that doesn't mean part 1 has nothing to it, because there were several things that, I remember looking back, Nick, when I'm trying to organize all the different clips, organize different segments and funniest points, etc. And I'm like, I forgot so much that happened in the year. That's like, wow, that happened in this year, because it feels so long ago.
Yeah, a lot of things happened over the year. Some crazy, some insane news. We've had gambling scandals. We've had women abuse scandals. We've had some positive news. We've probably talked about Conor McGregor more on this show and every show on the network, more than in an unhealthy manner, more than you've enjoyed. We've talked about a lot of different things on this show over the year of 2024, and you're just getting a taste of the first half of how this is going to go down. And there are some, like Thomas said, there's some stories I had forgotten about when we look back at the beginning of the year, because you have to remember, this goes all the way back to the beginning of January, to a time that most of us forget.
Well, if we're going to go in that route, so like last year, we'll split this up into 3 sections. Do the first 2 months, the next 2 months, the next 2 months, and then next week on Christmas Day, you'll get the remaining 6 months of the year. But looking back, going back all the way to January, I mean, Nick, we did kind of start this year off with a bang, and I mean, not in a good way, with because January, right at the start of the year, the Wander Franco stuff already started to come out.
Well, isn't it ironic that we're dealing, and you'll see that in part 2, as you
It's
were
come
just
back around.
that what goes around comes around. Unfortunately, I hate using that saying, but it kind of is accurate now. But Wander Franco gets arrested for the first time for his incident, and you and I struggled through the beginning of this story because we didn't know exactly the full context of the story and how it went. Then we find out the report that he was dating an underage girl, reportedly 14 years old, but we never had it officially.
There was an investigation. There was an arrest. The mother also was arrested, supposedly, and it was just
She was paid off, supposedly.
It was a really weird and a really distasteful situation. And then here in America, Nick, already right off the start, the NFL season was already finishing. This guy was injured because his season only lasted 4 plays, but Mr. already got into the mix. 2 episodes straight where we talked about this. The whole debacle with Jimmy Kimmel, the whole debacle with The List, and Jimmy Kimmel threatening to sue. And I'm like, is Bob Iger going to have to get involved?
Well, there were reports that he supposedly did get involved with this scenario because here's the problem. So he was on Pat McAfee's show, which is an ESPN product, and Jimmy Kimmel is what? An ABC late night show.
Both owned by the Disney company.
So we're doing partner on partner crime here at the Mickey Mouse company. So this gets ugly. Rodgers is wrong, like very wrong, with the way he handled this situation. And I told you, and I say it in the clips, I hate Jimmy Kimmel. I do not like him. I don't like the way he over touches politics on late night, but that's unfortunately how every talk show is treated now, unfortunately. But Aaron went too far, and that's what led to the whole debacle that happened.
And then you had, in the midst of all this, Nick, a couple of pretty noticeable coaching retirements. Now, as the 2023 season for the NFL was starting to play out and the Patriots were just going down, you had a feeling that Belichick was officially going to part ways. But I did not expect, I would have been shocked if you told me that in January 2024, Bill Belichick would have departed the Patriots and Nick Saban was going to retire from Alabama. Like, that is insane. Both of them going away in the same month.
Yeah. No one... I mean, Nick Saban's tenure kind of came to an end in an awkward way, not winning, his team kind of getting eliminated from the playoff.
Well, then you could say the same for Belichick and how bad the Patriots were in 2023.
Belichick's Patriots were in decline for quite a few years. Then he just couldn't recover, and Kraft had to finally pull the plug on him because they needed a new regime, younger regime, to come in and be better. But yes, you're 100% right. You never see two guys like Belichick and Saban retire in the same facet, almost, so to speak. And it made a bunch of headlines because you're never going to see two types of guys like that again who have that much success in the sports that they work in.
For sure. And in the midst of all that's within the same episodes, you had one of the more interesting trades of the NBA, well, last season, not the season we're currently in, last season, when Pascal Siakam was traded. But we said the way the Raptors and the Pacers were both going, it was kind of, the lines were there.
Well, the Raptors still are going through a tough time with their organization to this day. That was kind of, well, you won't pay me, so I'll send you somewhere. That's typical NBA. Now, I wouldn't say he's an A plus 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 star. I would say he's like A minus, B plus, like second tier.
Yeah.
Really good player too. And I think the Raptors just didn't want to pay. Like they just thought he was overvaluing himself, and it proved to be true. He got traded.
We also had, well, one, if we're going to call them commissioner roles, both from episode 218. You had one commissioner who was ousted and one who was extended. The one ousted from his role at TKO and WWE again, Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Yes. So was this, just so I remember correctly, was this around the documentary situation yet, or no?
The documentary had not come out yet. No.
Okay, so
but this was the start of the. Well, I say start. I mean, everything goes back to 2022. But this is when Janelle Grant, her lawsuit officially, her accusations and lawsuit officially came into play.
Right. So this is the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Essentially, and then later in the, I'm sure actually it'll be in the second half because we probably talked about the documentary in the second half.
No, the documentary wasn't out.
Oh,
documentary wasn't out. But the thing we talked about was, obviously he came back the first time, but that was, we talked about in 2023 for the sale of WWE, which eventually showed the WWE UFC merging into this
TKO
brand. Yeah. But basically he was no longer the majority person, and he was he basically sold off his stake in the company. So
I found it.
He's done.
I found it very interesting, just for one point, that he was a figurehead essentially at one point. He was not in power.
But the TKO structure, when he came back in with 2023, it was set up so that if something like this, and I've got a feeling the brains behind TKO, Ari Emanuel, kind of knew something was going to come back up. So it wasn't an if, when something like this happened again, it was an easy exit out.
And also, this is very rare for if you want to call him a commissioner of a sport, like you said. He was able to make money and sell his position. It's not like, well, actually, I shouldn't say that.
What it reminds me of Donald Sterling. I think we were both going to go.
That's one. But I was going to say the Suns owner who made a huge fortune off selling his franchise, and on and on and on. I could go. Oh, the Panthers owner who had the horrible statue. But like, these owners make money, or commissioners make money, when they're idiots.
Well, don't worry, Nick. Vince McMahon is gone forever, but Adam Silver is here to stay.
We can't do a best of without him being in here in some way, shape, or form.
Him, Rob Manfred, but Adam Silver was actually extended back in January.
Yeah, and this was around, like, they were trying to decide. The TV deals were just starting to be discussed.
That's later. That's later. That all starts later in this part, and then it stretches into part 2 next week.
But this was like the very, very beginning. No one had any idea about, and we'll get to this in part 2, when the TNT saga starts and all the, how much money and the $76 billion and all that stuff. But yeah, Adam Silver gets extended. He's a players commissioner, which we talk about a lot throughout the year. And personally, I didn't understand it at all, but the players love him, so I guess he stays.
Exactly. So looking back at this now, I mean, obviously, when we talk about the champions of the sports from this year, the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl back in February, but that actually ended up getting overshadowed by the shooting that took place during the Chiefs break. Now, fortunately, we have not had any sort of incidents or shooting incidents at any sort of parades this year since. So hopefully, we pray that this was a one-time ordeal.
Well, the one thing I will say is, I never thought it was very safe to go to these events to begin with. This is
Right.
just my opinion. I don't know what your
No,
opinion is.
you talked about this back then.
Yeah, and like people, you and I even talked about, like, would you and I go to the Canyon of Heroes to go watch the Yankee parade?
I would love to have the opportunity to.
Absolutely. If it was safe, yes, absolutely. If there was a way that I could get to the Canyon of Heroes and watch it, and there was no issues, and because sometimes New York City is not always the safest place to be in. Trust me, I know. But what I would say is it was an unfortunate situation. Now, when you go to every championship parade, regardless of the sport, what do they have at every event now?
Security.
Well, not just security. They now have check stations and
Yeah.
and they have metal detectors, like on-site metal detectors now at every championship parade. And now I think they even make you clear your pockets even when you enter these things.
Well, that's what happens when an event like this happens. Now, more safety measures have to go into effect.
Yeah, and you can't always have nice things either.
No. Lastly, for the segment of January and February, well, we had about a lot of baseball news when it came to free agency that was going on during the time period. So obviously, we were coming right off of kind of end 2023. We had Shohei Ohtani going over to the Dodgers. That was like at the very tail end, and then Yamamoto signing with the Dodgers. You had the Phillies, who it turned out had the highest money for Yamamoto, but of course he goes to the Dodgers to form that little pact with Shohei, and the rest is now history with this season. You also had Scott Boras clients who, in the meantime, were just sitting there waiting.
Well, Scott has had Scott Boras, or BSBS as we like to call him. If you don't get that, that's an inside joke for over the years. But Scott Boras has a reputation of, you do what I want, I don't do what you tell me. Basically, if you don't take my offer, we'll go somewhere else. But
and a history of, overshotting his initial bids by a lot.
Well, and it finally came to screw him, because there were how many guys?
Bellinger was waiting. Chapman was waiting.
The former Yankee pitcher.
Montgomery was waiting. And I think Jomo actually ended up firing him afterwards.
He did. It kind of reminds me back in the day, and I think you know where I'm going with this, the A-Rod situation, where basically A-Rod wanted to be a Yankee. He made that clear after the fact, and Boras said, opt out. And what did Cashman and the Yankees say? Don't opt out. We're not taking you. Well, the Yankees fibbed and went back and
right. But
did it.
you know what? We kind of saw it with this offseason too, with when Garrett Cole opted out, and the Yankees were like, "Okay, see you later."
Same thing. And
but the difference is Cole actually went back to the original terms of the deal,
which is because he has all the injuries. But long story short, and it's ironic that we're talking about Boras now, and you'll see it more later.
For full context, we're recording this in a time where we still don't know. So, if just in case we're missing information, Nick and I are recording this at a time where we still don't know anything about Juan Soto. We still don't know anything about much of MLB free agents, Pete Alonso included. But Pete Alonso is part of it. He is a Scott Boras client, and it was back in February where you saw that report that Stearns was going to allow Pete Alonso to test free agency, and well, here we are.
How ironic is that statement? Because, well, and by the way, I like Stearns. He comes from the Milwaukee organization. They bring him over here. Very smart guy, by the way, understands finances. But the problem is when you have a drunken sailor who's an owner, then that's a problem. So what do you do with a drunken owner and a guy who's trying to be smart with finances?
You want me to sing the song? Way, hey, and up she right. That's St. Patrick's time. This is the holiday. So, so quite an interesting January, February, quite an interesting start to this year. And there's just more nutty things to come.
Yeah, so go check these clips out, and you're going to see the funny, the stupid, the ridiculous, and some opinionated. So that's multiple choice. Just there's no test. but just go watch the clips. What the hell punishment can Rob Manfred give, to make this even look logical?
If we're gonna compare the apples and oranges, Trevor Bauer got a 2-year suspension.
But didn't he appeal and get it cut down?
No. So it was 300 and... Oh, no. Oh, yes, you're right. 194 games.
So it was appealed down to like a season and 30 games or something.
But if that's the case, this kind of crime, you could see 3+ years.
I'm going to say you're going to see banishment. I don't know if you're going to see permanent banishment because there will be lawsuits if he gives a permanent banishment.
You mentioned you don't trust Rob Manfred, which you have your God-given right to, because we've talked about how in God's name he continues to screw things up in baseball. What do you think? What do you think should happen to Franco? What do you think Manfred will do?
I think it needs to be what we said. It needs to be a 3 or 4 year ban, but it has to include that Rob Manfred has to reinstate on the basis of approval.
So in other words, like when an NFL player gets suspended for a year or plus, then they have
after 3. Who was the one? Was it Josh Gordon? The one that got 3 warnings, or he got in trouble 3 times and got thrown out of the league for a year, and you have to be reinstated by Roger to get back.
If I'm not mistaken, Calvin Ridley, after his 1 year with the game, because it was 1 year more, he had to get reinstated.
Yes, so I think the rule is in the NFL, if you get a 1 year or more, you have to be reinstated. You have to apply for reinstatement, and you're not guaranteed. You have company friction going on.
Yay! Well, if I'm Bob Iger, as I told you before,
the CEO of Disney, by the way.
Right.
Yes.
If I'm Bob Iger, I am stepping in the middle of this before this gets to the courtroom. I think it would be smart of him to do that.
I mean, and people are going to yell at me saying because I don't like Aaron, why I'm about to say this, but Aaron's got to be off for at least a couple weeks. At least. ESPN's kind of in a rock and a hard place because they don't control the content filter. They don't control.
You're right. They don't control the content filter. And I guess you can say they didn't really necessarily expect that Aaron was going to go in the direction that he would go in. At the same time, it did go out over ESPN airwaves. So in a way, they are responsible for what happens on their show.
Of course, they're 100% responsible for what goes out over their airwaves. But I blame ESPN for making the deal that way because they have no control over. No, I don't agree with networks having editorial control over content, but you have to have some control in some way to say, "Hey, you can't do this."
But can you say that ESPN made that move out of desperation because of
100%?
They needed the young demographic,
and they're getting it too because it's all on their ESPN YouTube channel, ESPN Plus, all the digital platforms. They're making a killing. The $85 million is going to look cheap in the long run when they get to the end of that. I'm a huge fan of McAfee. I like the way he does his content. I like guys who don't care about the rules. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar?
Well, Nick, I guess I know where you're going. McAfee is the bleepster. He eggs his guest on and gets reactions.
Now,
and then you have AJ Hawk just sitting there like.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not going after AJ Hawk because it's not 100% fair. But I
know. No,
what does he do?
I know he's a meme. He's a meme of silence.
It's like they count the amount of seconds he's talking during the show. It's like, but I don't know. Pat says that this is trash talk. I'm sorry, and I agree with Jimmy Kimmel when he said it during the rant. The one thing I agreed with: you don't make jokes about pedophilia. I don't care who you are. I don't care how famous you are. I don't care how many followers you have. I don't care how much money you have. You don't make jokes about pedophilia at all.
And look, do I honestly think Rodgers is never coming on again? No. Here's what I think is happening. He's not going to make his appearances during the postseason. And once it's preseason time, he's going to come back. So for all of you saying, oh, you're bowing to the corporate, you're bowing to the mouse, shut up. Rodgers is going to come back. He's just leaving earlier. He's just leaving earlier than expected because of a stupid controversy that he caused. But it's only for it. Like I said, it's only for a month because the NFL's already in postseason. Rodgers isn't playing in the postseason. He hasn't played at all this season because of his injury. So relax. As Aaron Rodgers likes to say. Sorry, Nick.
RELAX.
I'll let that one slide. But
he will be back in August because, listen, was McAfee wrong in this kind of scenario? Yeah, he's had his fair share of wrongs in this scenario. But listen, what we said last week, nothing is of major consequences going to happen because ESPN knows they cannot afford to lose McAfee. I know there were rumors that his retirement was kind of impending.
Looming.
I just didn't think it was going to be this season. I thought he would have gone one or two more, especially the way that, they came so close and then just the play calling in that overtime against Michigan in the Rose Bowl. I just thought he was going to try and go at it one or two more times before calling a career. I didn't think that this is how it was going to end.
What's incredible, though, is he had a run. So he's won 7 national titles, 1 with LSU, 6 with Alabama. He's coached a lot of legendary players. He kind of reminds me of Belichick with the Patriots and the NFL level. Like an incredible career that you're not going to be able to beat. Legendary career. He will. I'm guaranteeing you, he will have a statue someday outside Alabama Stadium. Like I said, 7 titles, 1 with LSU, 6 with Alabama, and he was a respected coach. That's the big thing. Like, was he conventional by any means? No, he was unconventional. Same thing with Belichick. Belichick was unconventional, but people respect the name Saban. They respect the name Belichick in every way, shape, or form. They're going to listen.
Because, for all that you want to say about Nick Saban and being tired of Alabama or any sort of controversy or all too, SEC powerful. But you mentioned like Belichick, we talk about all of Belichick and the Patriots controversies. But at the end of the day, just like Belichick and the Patriots, Nick Saban in Alabama is a dynasty. After 20 plus years as the man on the sidelines, leading the New England Patriots to several Super Bowls, working in tandem with Tom Brady, Bill Belichick's run in New England is over.
By the way, that was bizarre watching the press conference with Bill and Robert Kraft and him actually speaking normally. And
him joking that, I haven't seen this many cameras here for us since we signed Tebow.
And Tebow quote tweeted the video on social media, which was funny, by the way. Excuse me. But this is not a surprise. People are acting shocked, which is kind of shocking to me because I guarantee you they probably knew this 3 to 4 months ago. They knew it. The Patriots are not dumb.
Well, we have the reports from the NBC Sports Boston insiders that were saying that this decision probably may have been made after the loss in Germany against the Colts. Was the decision officially made then? No, but I think it kind of was in Kraft's mind of maybe it is time to move forward. And honestly, Nick, we talk about with the whole Raptor story that there is a time in which it is time to tear things down and build things back up again. And here's another example. The Patriots, this long-running dynasty, you have to give credit where credit is due. As much as I swallow pride in saying that, all those championships that they've won since Brady first came to the scene in 2001, 2002, and that run, that dynasty, nearly 20 years of a dynasty in New England, but that time is over. It's time now for time now for new beginnings. And unfortunately, after a season like they've had, where they had so few wins, seeing the Patriots at the bottom of the AFC standings, near the bottom of the NFL, after all this time, since maybe the early 90s, At some point, Nick, it's time to move forward.
This trade was going to happen at some point. Like the Raptors, they just don't have the pieces to compete. And when you're in the NBA, unfortunately, either you're here or you're there. You're not in between.
That was my point, is that, when you win a championship, you're so desperate to keep that team together, because it's always about, that team led to success, that team may have been the symbol of perfection. But at times, number one, obviously, you need to improve as everybody else and all the different pieces move and players move on their own. But then there's just, there's a time in which you have to admit that whatever success that you had with whatever plan that you had, especially if it's a team that didn't win a championship, obviously the Raptors here did win a championship, that something has gone wrong. The plan has hit the wall, and at some point you just need to tear it down, blow it up, rebuild, whatever you want to say. And I think the Raptors have now gotten to that point where they recognize where they are.
Right. And I got to give credit to the Pacers, too. Like, the Pacers have been a really good team, offensively, defensively, competing with teams. This is staggering. Now, let me say this. I'm not surprised that Vince would do any of this. Like, Vince is a crazy man in every way.
And we've heard plenty of stories in the past of Vince and how he treats women. Stories about divas, as they were then called, the women superstars, the divas. And then of course the Rita Chatters, I believe her name was Rita Chatterton, the female referee from the 80s that apparently Vince tried to make a move on and then fired after she refused his advances. There was a story from June 2022, the former WWE female superstar who, once she stopped doing his entertaining his advances, got demoted and then eventually left the company.
Right.
So, they also do list WWE corporate officers in here as, high-ranking people who had knowledge of the situation.
Well, I want to read one thing also, which here it says WWE has also attempted to sweep the matter under the rug following media reports that McMahon was involved in the hush money payment scandal. Now, we talked about this, if you remember, back in 2023, that he owed like millions. This was not like a small, they were talking about like 14, 15 million reportedly, if I'm not mistaken. And I just want to make sure we're right. WWE released a statement in June 2022 to announce that a special committee of its board of directors was investigating the alleged misconduct and appointing Stephanie McMahon as interim CEO.
Right. And basically, Miss Grant is claiming that whole thing was a whole
farce.
Yeah. But we also do have to remember something, and I don't know what role this plays in it. The reason Vince even came back, if you remember, Nick, was because he still had the voting power at that time. So he strong-armed. So, and he said basically that what eventually we saw with the Endeavor deal, the Netflix deal, he basically said, I will block any sort of sale of WWE. I will block any sort of financial moves unless I'm brought back.
What justification do we have for keeping Adam Silver as the commissioner of the sport? He can't control the James Harden, Daryl Morey situation, basically calling out his GM on top of it and then forcing his way out. He hasn't controlled any of those situations, by the way. Hey, I'm forcing my way out. You can't do anything.
Morey is a liar.
Well, yeah, but that whole situation was a mess. James Harden basically sat out and ate himself to fatness so he didn't have to play. But
he's fat!
Yeah. And then the whole John Morant situation, which I don't know. How long did we spend on that? Months.
Weeks. Months.
I mean, he got that suspension wrong, by the way. What was it, 20 games?
25 games. And John Morant and the NBPA still cried about it.
Which, between us and the NBPA, you got off lucky. Very lucky. He should have been suspended for the year, and a year plus, if I really want to be honest there. For not one, not two, I think it was three. No, it was 3 incidents that he had. 2 gun incidents, and then with that asshole group of guys that he was hanging around with. Pack. So Adam Silver has no idea how to be a leader. He's just kowtowing and bowing down to the players. Look at the NFL. Roger Goodell doesn't take shit from the players. We get on Roger for some of the decisions that he makes.
But the NFL is also an owners' league. The NBA has become a players' league.
The desperate, I need to keep my players, so we'll do anything to keep them happy league. Scott Boras is the biggest agent in Major League Baseball and will do anything or everything to get every last penny that he thinks you deserve. Now, for people behind the curtain, there was a great documentary on CNBC that talked about everything he does. He gets 4% of every contract that he puts. That's a lot. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he's incentivized to get these large contracts. Now, the Blake Snell situation, he's not getting 9 years, 270. Blake Snell is either going to accept the deal, like the Yankees gave us 6 years, 150,
or he's going to do a 1 or 2 year contract,
or he's going to sit out, which we've seen Boris clients do.
And I expect the Yankees are not going to move off that offer so they can make a play to extend Soto.
Yeah. So the Yankees will leave that out there and say either take it or leave it. Secretly, I think they don't want him to take it. That's just my guess. I understand Scott Boras. You want Scott Boras as an agent because he's going to get you money that probably other agents are not going to get you. But also, what do you think teams are doing now because of Scott Boras? They're basically saying
they're becoming smarter, and they're saying, okay, they're doing the Moneyball method. It's like, can I get the kind of production you want, but for much cheaper than you're demanding?
Well, it's not just that, but they're just saying, screw you, Scott Boras. We're not dealing with you. And the major market teams are getting smarter too. Hey, because over the years, Scott Boras has had the Yankees number for many years, getting big time clients to New York. And look what happened. Now, he thought the Yankees were going to bite on the 9 years, 270. They're not going to bite. They're not paying anybody.
I don't know what I can say to make this better, and I honestly don't think I can, because what can we say here that we didn't already say? What the hell is the purpose behind this?
Mentally ill, sick people, part of it.
Mental illness in my mind, Nick, when it comes to doing such wretched, horrible, gruesome things, especially to children, there's no excuse for that.
Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying there's any excuse whatsoever for this incident. We live in an unfortunate world now where
we're numb to stuff. Like, I hate to say it, but it feels like we're numb to this because every year, and it seems like Nick, to the point of every month or every couple of months, there's always something that comes up of some sort of deadly.
This is now the story. The Super Bowl is now a forgotten story because people are going to say somebody died and there are 22 wounded people. How can you freaking think about the Super Bowl? You could be Democrat, Republican, or right down the middle. If you're a shooter that hurts people, you are stupid regardless of what side of the aisle you're on.
It does not matter who you are. It does not matter who you are, what your race is, what you believe in. If you do something like this is, I'm sorry, but you're a sicko. I'm sorry.
Right. And so throw your political affiliations out the window, throw your race affiliations out the window, throw your sexual orientation out the window. This has nothing to do with it. It has to do with there are sick people in this world who shoot other people or go to an event where this is a momentous occasion for fans who are rooting for their team. The Mets have not had a great offseason, to say the least. They installed David Starnes, who was the Brewers GM. Everyone said, high profile. Excuse me. That I think the Brewers tried to block everybody from him being moved. Excuse me. And the Mets get him, and they're expecting him to make moves. You have I don't know if you want to call him a greedy owner, which has billions of dollars willing to spend. But I do agree on him not spending because all the money he just spent on Verlander and Scherzer basically got flushed down the toilet because he had to trade them away because it wasn't working.
Mm-hmm.
So this Alonso deal, I don't know if this is a hot take. He's not going to be a Met.
No, it's not a hot take, and I am 100% agree with you. He's not going to be. I think there's too much tension. I think the relationship has kind of died off. I think there's going to be a team out there, Nick, that's going to want a first baseman with the kind of power that Pete Alonso can provide.
Gee, you dare say someone needs a powerful hitting first baseman.
I was going to say, Nick, well, Rizzo's contract is up at the end of the season, and LeMahieu's now your third baseman. So that's why I said if Soto doesn't sign...
Well, I think you can still get Alonso for cheap if you tried. I mean, like, as long as you're willing to give him a long-term deal, I think he'll bite a little bit less on the
Nick,
year average.
Just imagine if that actually happened.
You're going to have Mets fans. Mets fans are going to hit the fucking ceiling if that goes down. No one cares. Okay, you were reportedly the biggest offer. No one cares. Is he in a Philly uniform? No. So that's it. It's over. There's not much to read into. This is making John Middleton feel better to the media. Basically say, oh, well, look at us. We were the biggest offer right here.
It's like,
but you lost.
Yeah, you lost.
You know how they say, like, today, like, whenever we used to play sports, like competitive sports when we were kids, there was no such thing as a participation trophy. Like, you won first, second, or third, and that was it. Now, and I hate to say this, but in today's, like, organized kids sports, everyone gets a freaking trophy, including last place. Okay? This is Philadelphia looking for the participation trophy, finishing in last place.
This is John Middleton.
Emotional damage.
Yeah. Good. All right. You know what, John Middleton? I'll give you a participation trophy for being involved in the negotiations, but you finished in last.
I mean, you know what you can do with all that money now? Maybe you can try to appease Bryce Harper, as now he might be looking for a new contract. Well, we hope you enjoyed those clips for the first 2 months of the year. Time to take it over to the next 2 months of the year, March and April. Less clips this time around, but some pretty major impactful stories. So the baseball world continued on. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani was getting ready for his first season with the Dodgers. And then all of a sudden, his buddy Ippei, his translator and good friend, was fired by the Dodgers and accused of massive theft. You saw Ohtani then end up making a statement and not taking questions. All for us to find out that basically Ippei was accused of stealing millions of dollars from Shohei Ohtani and using that to cover up some gambling debt.
Yes.
Major gambling debt, I should add.
Oh, yeah, but we say major, it's major. We're talking about like 18 to 24, $25 million in gambling debt. We learned that this guy has such a gambling problem that Gamblers Anonymous would have not saved this guy at all. And this took a lot of breakdown, if you remember. We went through like every document, every quote, remember, like, he was calling up and making up that he was Shohei, allegedly, to get money out of bank accounts?
Mm-hmm.
Or, like, he was calling, like, insurance companies to get money.
Yeah, that supposedly he mastered Ohtani's signature.
Which, by the way, that's fraud in a bad way. Actually, all fraud is bad, so I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. But, yes, so this situation happens, massive theft. Everyone thought that Shohei was causing the issues.
And people still feel that. And there are people who still feel that way. There are people who cringe at the fact that the Dodgers won the World Series because there are some people who feel Shohei Ohtani should not be in baseball.
Now, I won't hold him liable, but I feel like... Oh, good.
No, I was going to say, which when we do the May-June segment, it's going to be quite funny that we make mention of Shohei Ohtani and accusations against him and Ippei.
Yeah, and basically what I'll finish on that is basically I don't hold him liable, but he's involved in some way. Is the way I look at it.
Well,
but
him not taking any questions from media, just reading that statement,
that was bad.
That was a bad look. Whether he was involved or not, that was a little bit of the bad look.
You know what they say about written statements.
Well, given that last month we saw a certain somebody make a written statement and then somebody from ESPN give him a bunch of crap that he kind of didn't deserve. Yeah.
Yep.
We also, by the way, during that span, LeBron James and JJ Redick started their podcast.
Which now doesn't exist.
I was going to say, which sounds like nothing. But then as we go through the months, will lead to something.
What's so funny is like Mind the Game, which was the name of the podcast. Well, guess what? I guess JJ and LeBron are Mind the Game because they ended up on the same team together. So
you kind of spoiled. I say spoiled where I was going with this. I mean, it's the best stuff people already know, but kind of ruined the transition there. Thank you, Nick. With a bad pun to throw in there too.
That's what I'm good for. You'll see throughout the year of clips and chaos that goes on the show.
Which, by the way, within this segment of clips, you also see Bronny James officially declaring for the NBA draft. Now,
this was a bad time. Like, just like you hit me with every LeBron James story, and I just wanted to scream and yell, just like crazy. So you got me.
Yeah, you have the Ohtani Ippei controversy, and you've got all the Bronny stuff. And look, I kind of say it there. Obviously, he had the heart issue, which impacted his senior high school season, impacted his college season. And I threw the idea, I don't know if it made it into the clip, but I threw in the idea within that span of episodes. Well, why doesn't he start in the G League? Well, you know what?
I remember that in one of the clips. Yeah.
And now he's in the G League. Now, and you know what? That's good because it gives him time to develop. And you know what that does for that G League, for the G League and the team?
Yeah. Now, the context, and I think that's more where this clip goes, is you and I discussed how he was rushed out of USC after one semester into the draft. I did a whole short video separately, if you remember, going off on the fact that everyone, the whole world knew that the Lakers were going to pick him with the 55th, I think, overall pick.
Well, we'll talk about how multiple teams were looking at him, but everybody assumed that it was going to be the Lakers, or it was kind of part of the LeBron sweepstakes. Whoever got Bronny was going to get LeBron. It
was the most ridiculous thing because LeBron was not leaving the Lakers, so it was just a matter of, was one team going to screw over LeBron in that scenario?
Which also meant potentially screwing over themselves. I say that as LeBron James to start the season has been phenomenal for somebody who's 40 years of age.
He's had triple doubles. He's turned Anthony Davis back around, even though Anthony Davis has been healthy. But
and for the first time, I don't know if you saw it, but for the first time in NBA 2K history, he's not the highest overall on his team. It's Anthony Davis.
That's a little shocking, actually. But just to finish that point, you and I also discussed like the whole medical drama that went down with Bronny, and like there was a little bit of what's the term when you don't want your medical stuff revealed?
HIPAA stuff.
Yeah, we talked about the HIPAA violations that possibly went down also, and I think even LeBron at one point got a little pissed off that like Bronny's medical stuff was floating in the atmosphere for a little bit, and that kind of was a problem. So you'll see that.
This was a forgotten controversy, but I remember it from back when we were doing this. The whole thing going down with Kim Mulkey at LSU, where the Washington Post was making that report about mistreatment of players.
So people don't remember it because it was kind of it was like a dust bunny under the rug. It kind of got swept under it. And the media, and if I remember correctly, it was a certain reporter who goes after her all the time. It was the Washington Post. And we spent a lot of time on this story too, because there was a lot of legal we had to sort through. Excuse me, to understand this story. And then she did the wrong thing, if you remember, standing up on the post game stand and basically attacked the credibility of the Washington Post.
Tried to get out of the story, out in front of the story, and said, "If this gets published, I will sue." And then
that was a problem.
And then the story came out, and then you had the LA Times column. It's not part of the clip, but you also had the LA Times column, which basically attacked her, and she went after them too.
That article was actually very well done, if I remember correctly. The LA Times article, the Post article was a little. If you remember you and I were kind of poking holes in some of the write up of the story a little bit, and you know what? She was wrong. She brought more. The Washington Post got what they wanted when she threatened to sue them in front of the cameras, in front of the ESPN cameras, in front of everything. So she kind of did herself a disservice in that regard.
And then you also had, I want to save probably the biggest one for last, but you had this, you were talking about reporters, kind of a transition into that really creepy reporter from Texas who was being a real, well, I already said creep towards Caitlin Clark. That one press conference about chewing the heart and everything.
The heart symbol and the being at every press conference. You're talking about Indianapolis Star columnist Greg Doyle.
Yes, Greg Doyle. That's right.
And this guy has been covering Indianapolis sports. Like, he's a lifer. Or was a lifer. I don't know if he's still there. I don't want to get in trouble and say the wrong thing. But he got suspended from covering the team, the Indiana Fever, and talking to her. And if I remember correctly, you and I watched videos of it. And
it was so uncomfortable.
She was creeped out.
It was so uncomfortable to listen to.
And actually, I remember the other conversation we had. I don't know if it's in this clip, but remember you and I talked about journalism integrity?
Yeah, that wasn't.
So, but off this conversation, you and I talked about, hey, there's a difference between getting to know an athlete, talking to an athlete, saying, hey, I like your game. You're good at the game of basketball.
Yep.
Then let's make hearts and I'm your biggest fan. Now, I will disagree with one thing, that I think you can be a fan of a team and you can cover a sport, but you have to know when the fan hat is on, and as you would say, the journalism hat
is on. Absolutely. I mean, Nick, goes back to one of the pieces that I have bookmarked from Sports Illustrated years ago, when it was a piece about, Michael Wilbon from Pardon the Interruption was at the Cubs game where they had clinched the
I remember that.
The NLCS. Yeah. It was an off day for him. He was wearing an Ernie Banks jersey
and a Cubs hat.
Yeah, and they told him, you're needed for a segment. Your day also, you got to go. I'm dressed like this, and he was actually told, nobody will care.
I mean, and I remember he got shit big time for it because, people say, "Oh, you're a Cubs fan. You're a reporter at ESPN. You can't be wearing." You're allowed to be a fan of a team. Who cares?
It's known that Wilbon is Chicago born and raised.
Right. I mean, you know who used to get the biggest, and it's a big name, used to work at ESPN, now owns his own network at Spotify. Bill Simmons.
Yeah.
Bill Simmons is what? A Boston guy through and through. So where does his bias lead towards? The Celtics, the Red Sox.
Right. And yet also at the same time, this was also in the Sports Illustrated piece. Don't offer condolences to the reporter because you know what? Even if his team doesn't make it, check's still going to clear. But
Thank you. Exactly right.
But at the same time, we talk about checks clearing and the industry as a whole. That's a whole other topic.
It's a whole nother issue that I don't even know. I'm sure we talk about ESPN at some point.
Well, it didn't happen within the first 6 months, so
that's a good start.
Well, this segment, one other clip to mention. We talk about gambling to start this stuff. Well, Jontay Porter getting banned by the NBA.
And if I'm not mistaken, well, actually, this comes after one ban already in Ippei.
No. Oh, yeah, Ippei getting fired by the Dodgers. And then in the May-June segment, we have another MLB ban that we still have to talk about.
Oh, no. We'll get there. But basically, one thing on the Jontay Porter, this guy is the dumbest athlete I've ever seen in my life. Like, quite literally. Like, he supposedly he had, like, this team of friends or people that were betting stats on him. And then he would claim like he had injuries or whatever. And remember, the NBA is very meticulous about injury reports. So basically the stats like were creating like percentages because he could hit them in smaller amounts, or like he would say, I have a headache or this or that, take me out of the game. And I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? Like, and then the NBA, which, by the way, did way more for gambling, like punishment for gambling than Major League Baseball ever really did, except for Pete Rose. And basically said, bye, don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out. And banned Jontay Porter for life. So, yeah. So here's the deal. Go check these out. Much different segment the first time. A lot of LA stuff. A lot of investigative stuff, some gambling, and throw a creep in there, and you have a party. So go check out March and April, and when we return, we will move on to May and June, where it becomes much more interesting in the best of Empty the Bench 2024, Part 1.
I just can't believe that Ippei just basically admitted right off the bat on Tuesday as to what had happened there.
He's like, yep, I fucked up and I'm in debt. I mean, so then this starts to trend all over. Initially, a spokesman for Ohtani told ESPN the slugger had transferred the funds to cover Mizhuara's gambling debt. The spokesman presented Mizhuara to ESPN for a 90-minute interview. What? What?
I can't explain it.
I mean, because
they did probably, in all fairness, ESPN, some of their reporters, they probably did find out about this.
I mean, so he does a 90-minute interview during which Mizhuara laid out his account in great detail. However, as ESPN prepared to publish the story Wednesday, the spokesman disavowed Mizhuara's account and said Ohtani's lawyers would issue a statement. Okay, so now we're getting the I said this, but now I'm telling you I'm denying it.
So, and now basically the center to all this is that apparently, according to the spokesperson, according to reports, Ohtani did not willingly give up the $4.5 million or whatever it was to pay off Ippei's debts, and that basically the allegation is that Ippei basically took the money. It was fraud.
So there's a quote here that says, in the course of responding to recent media inquiries, we discovered that Shohei has been the victim of a massive theft, and we are turning the matter over to the authorities.
Now, Nick, there is one other thing here that, we didn't make mention of before we started recording, and we failed to make mention here yet. So, obviously, in most states now, sports gambling has been legalized. But this is in California.
The one place where it hasn't been.
One of the 10 states that it is still illegal.
For James, the show is not necessarily geared toward the hot take audience. Okay, I'm going to call BS right off that notion to say that we're not in the hot take culture.
How many episodes will it take for a hot take to be dropped?
Well, it's JJ Redick. It's going to come out at some point.
Fair enough. That's my point.
So he says, when I do a project, the only thing I think about is whether me and my friends would watch it. Really? That's it? That's all you think about? You and your friends, if they would watch it, not if other people would watch it? And then he goes on to say, that is definitely the case with Mind the Game. Everything doesn't need to be designed for internet culture and clicks. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're not doing a podcast for clicks and views.
We'll see how long that lasts.
It also says the intended focus of the new podcast recalls comments NBA Commissioner Adam Silver made on Reddick's The Old Man and the Three podcast regarding the state of commentary on the league. In November, Silver expressed his frustration that discussions of game action are reduced to simplistic quips, such as this team wanted it more. He believed that both the league and its media partners could do a better job breaking down coaching schemes and individual plays. Okay, so I'll put that in English. They think that they're doing a podcast all about the NBA, and they're going to be the X's and O's podcast.
And in some ways, Nick, I will appreciate that. But
If
again,
it's true.
right, that's good. But my point is that how long is it going to take, like you kind of mentioned, before JJ Redick puts out some sort of take that blows up everything? One way or another, whether Ohtani's involved or not, Ippei's effed. He's done.
He's going to end up in jail doing time, unless he's part of the Shohei brigade and they're going to let him off with a slap on the wrist or probation or whatever.
And the thing is, Nick, well, going off of that, I don't see anything happening to Shohei. I honestly don't, because the assumption as of this point is he never bet on a baseball game. And Ippei never bet on
Wait
a
a minute.
baseball game.
We don't know that yet. Until they investigate the accounts, we're not going to know.
Well, that was going to be my caveat. If it comes out to be true that, there is a slip from, let's say, Ippei, and there is a baseball, it is a baseball betting slip without Shohei's money paid for, then we're talking a big controversy.
He's guilty, but we make this joke all the time, but he would literally be guilty by association if that's the case.
Right.
I mean, here's the thing. Everyone is going back and comparing this. And I don't know, did you see the video from Pete Rose, by the way, that went out on social media?
Well, I was actually going to get to that, Nick, and somebody pointed out the last time there was a suspension for gambling in baseball.
It was Pete Rose.
No.
Oh, it wasn't?
2015, Jared Cosart. He actually, he got disciplined. He wasn't suspended, but he did receive a fine.
See, here's the weird thing about this, and I was reading about what could possibly happen. It's discretion by the commissioner for the punishment. So you know what that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means Rob Manfred. You really think Rob Manfred is going to ban him from the sport? Hell no.
But let me double check. Jared Cosart was fined and not suspended in 2015 for violating MLB rules of placing bets with illegal bookmakers. However, it does not look like that he was betting baseball. All the outlets started reporting on the Washington Post story. It's the story.
I have it up in front of me here.
It paints a picture of a coach whose brash manner and tendency to hold a grudge make her one of the most polarizing figures in college basketball history, and of a life devoted to the pursuit of basketball excellence that has left in its wake a series of fractured relationships. I mean, look, that's not exactly something that is uncommon, unfortunately, when it comes to sports. Now, the allegations of mistreatment of gay players, that's a little bit...
That's a problem.
That if if that's true, that's a big problem.
Well,
because
here's the thing. If that's proven accurate, she might get fired if that's the case.
It might. And it's weird because you would think, Nick, that that portion would have been the bigger portion to the story, but Kim Mulkey getting out in front of this story and basically threatening defamation and everything kind of took some of the momentum of the story away. It almost is like the story itself, Nick, based on the way Kim Mulkey got in front of it and how she reacted with it. It almost feels like this story was kind of to use the term, letdown.
Well, actually, the other direction I really was going to go with it is the way that she reacted to the story makes me think that some of this is true.
And I mean, I don't know how much. I mean, I can see the estranged relationship with the family members. The mistreatment of gay players is an allegation, and
That's a mess. By the way, if she didn't fight it, it would make me think even more that that was a problem if she wasn't fighting that allegation against the Washington Post.
I've gone on record, Nick, and I have predicted for the longest time that Bronny James would declare for this draft. LeBron would opt out of any contract, and basically it would be a double LeBron sweepstakes, and that whoever drafted Bronny would end up getting LeBron in the offseason, and this would be LeBron's last season, essentially. They would play one season together. But I look at Bronny James's numbers. I look at his stats, Nick, and while I might not be a basketball savant,
They're not great.
that far from great.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I think he averaged 5 points with USC. I'm looking up his just to get a confirmation on that, but
I think you're right, though. And
okay, 2023-24, 4.8 points, 2.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, shooting under 40%. It's not great.
Not great, Bob. No, it's terrible. And honestly, but you know what? A team is going to draft him because essentially, if LeBron, because I think he has an opt out, right? And we all assume that he's going to opt out.
He's going to opt out regardless. It's just a matter of.
So then this is going to play a pivotal role in the LeBron sweepstakes.
I mean, you have a tale of two stories here. Do you draft him because you want LeBron in his final season? You get all the ticket sales and the jersey sales, and you get the farewell trip, so it'll be under your jersey, even though it's going to be fake and BS because it's not his team. Or our team's going to say, nope, don't want to deal with that circus. Don't want to deal with LeBron. Don't want to deal with his son. We're wasting a high draft pick, which we could be on something else. So you have the angel and the devil going on here on both shoulders. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then because they get so confused, they hit themselves in their head and they move on.
I can't even believe I have to explain this because this guy has been around the journalism game for a long time. In that room, you are a journalist. You are not a fanboy.
Well, let's clarify one thing. When you're covering a team, you could have been a fan at one point. But you have to know, you've said this to me a lot, and I agree with it. You have to know when to be a fan and when to have the journalism hat on. So there's two different scenarios for that.
Right.
If it's a day off from your job, you want to watch a game, be my guest. I don't care. But you got to be careful what you write and what you say because it'll get misinterpreted quickly.
Yeah, like that was just why? Why does she need to give the heart sign to you? Like, what is the purpose of that? And that's why I say, Nick, maybe I got the direct quote about Portnoy's wrong and saying, pig instead of pervert. But if it looks like
both.
a pig,
might be both.
If it looks like a pig, if it walks like a pig, and it oinks like a pig, it's probably a pig.
Take your heart symbols and shove them up your you-know-what. Like,
here, I'll give you a heart symbol. Not enough for you?
In addition, from January through March of 2024, while traveling with the Raptors or Raptors 905, that's the Raptors NBA G League affiliate, Porter placed 13 bets on NBA games using an associate's online betting account. Okay. Listen closely, everybody. I really don't have to explain this because this is, if you don't get this, then you're living under a rock. One, you can't place bets on the sport you're in. Number one. Number two, you're using an associate's online betting account. Big, fat, no.
Isn't this drawing parallels to a certain somebody in another sport?
Well, that was the next point I was going to make. This has Ippei Mizhuara. Maybe they confided on each other for this plan or something. I don't know. But These bets ranged in size from $15 to $22,000 for a total of $54,094. But here's the difference, though, between Ippei Mizhuara and Jontay Porter. Jontay Porter made a profit. You know, it would be a great show. Ippei Mizhuara, Jontay Porter, and Tim Donaghy. Let's make a podcast.
Hi, our names are Ippei, Jontay, and Tim.
I wasn't even saying that. I'm talking about like a real gambling show. Forget the hi, my name is Craig nonsense. Yes, Craig Card. No one cares about you.
So yeah, March and April had some interesting stuff to it, but definitely less clips. But don't worry, May and June, we make up for that because a lot happens in May and June. And I know I don't have them listed because Nick and I are going through this in episode order. I don't have it listed because it was episode 233. This all starts with 232. But the biggest story of which I think for May and June, the NBA TV rights, which you mentioned earlier, that it is official. Next year, we will be hearing do.
Well, actually, a little update on that. There's actually a little snag going on between John Tesh and NBC. I'm not joking. I'm not trying to pull your leg.
But you get my point, though. The NBA is returning to NBC.
Yes, it'll return to NBC regardless if Round Ball Rock somehow shows up.
Which you and I, when we were growing up, we were little, NBA was always integrated into NBC.
Yeah, so those deals come by. The battle begins between Warner Brothers Discovery and the NBA and Adam Silver basically playing don't look at me, I don't know who you are anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Can't see you, don't hear you, don't talk to you. And this led to a long battle, which kind of bleeds again into the second half of the year. And you'll get to hear more about that resolution in the second half of the year. But
we also had the NBA. Oh, go ahead. If you
no, I was just going to say it gets ugly.
Yeah. Well, we also had the NBA playoffs going on because this was the time that we got started with playback. So again, shout out to them. Special shout out to them. And you saw Jamal Murray throwing objects onto the court during the playoffs.
And if I'm not mistaken, he got a big fine for that. If I'm not mistaken, huge fine.
But you said there should have been more. That it should have been a suspension.
It should have been a suspension because say he hits somebody and injures them in the process, it's bad. It costs somebody millions of dollars.
Well, you talk about costing something really costly. Over in the NFL around the same time, you had the Rashee Rice, which there's still been no punishment handed down by the league. I don't know if the investigation's still going on, but granted, Rashee Rice played a few weeks of the season and then got hurt, and his season was basically over. That
was quite literally the dumbest situation ever. In the sense of Rashee Rice is out with, I think he was out with a few guys or a group of people driving on the highway or something.
And actually somebody he played college football with.
One of them was driving a getaway car.
I think, wasn't it drag racing?
Yeah, drag racing. That's right. But they had guns in the car.
Yeah.
And, let's put it this way. Everything that you shouldn't have, they had. And he was refused. They were weaving in and out of traffic, almost hitting cars on the highway.
Yep.
So that got ugly. That was bad. Then you had this was like the month of arrests and criminal.
But this one was really bizarre, the whole Scotty Scheffler thing.
What's funny about this, I don't know if you remember when I was at work at 6:40 in the morning.
Where you saw the notification.
I get a tweet notification from Jeff Darlington, of all people, who actually is now covering golf on top of the NFL for ESPN. And it's this long, insanely large tweet, where you have to press the see more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, number one golfer Scotty Scheffler arrested at checkpoint to get into, I forgot which tournament it was. It was one of the majors, but it got ugly. He was arrested. I think he was even put in an orange jumpsuit, I'm not mistaken, inside of jail. And he got out quicker than I've ever seen in my life.
It was a PGA championship.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You have to remember, like, he was on a hot streak, like, just winning everything.
But he was able to come back and complete the course.
By the way, if he wasn't the number one golfer in the world and a big name in professional sports, he's not getting out.
Well, that also ended up being the question when he tried to enter, and there was that whole miscommunication with the officer. But how did you? That was a question we brought up. If you're assigned to work an event like the golf, like the PGA Championship, how do you not know who the number one golfer in the world is?
I mean, I'm sure he had some kind of identification. You could have just asked. I mean, like,
yeah. We did mention multiple NBA teams looking at Bronny. That brought up here as the lead up to the draft was coming. Of course, he does end up going to the Lakers, and the rest is history. Unfortunately, we also had in May and June a pair of very notable passings just within a couple of weeks of each other in the legendary Bill Walton, followed by the legendary Jerry West.
Yeah, that was quite a time period. Two legends in the NBA world and college basketball world. Yeah, that was a tough time. Bill Walton is, even though he had an incredible NBA career, I think he had a Hall of Fame career too, if I'm not mistaken. He's remembered for the broadcasts. And I'm trying to remember who he did the broadcast with. I forgot, because he liked wearing the Hawaiian shirts and the lays and all that stuff.
Personality when he was doing the broadcasting. Yes,
and it was a fun watching him. And that date is coming up again for the Hawaii, whatever the tradition that he does.
Yeah,
those games, and it's going to be weird not seeing him there for the first time.
And then Jerry West, obviously, legendary Hall of Fame career himself.
The logo.
And the logo itself now. Yeah.
Now, Lakers, Clippers, Warriors. Obviously, he'll be remembered with the Lakers. That'll always be his claim to fame, obviously. But two big names gone in a very quick span.
Yeah. You're talking about the Maui Invitational, by the way.
Yes, that's right.
In college basketball, yeah. And by the way, Bill Walton also spending part of his career with the Celtics. So you think about the legendary Lakers-Celtics rivalry.
You can't forget it.
Also in the basketball front, this is when, obviously, as teams get eliminated, free agency talks start up. And the 76ers, this was when the first reports came out. The 76ers were looking at one PG-13 to sign.
Well,
look how that's going for them.
I was going to say, I guess they didn't really look into that magic 8 ball and really predict what was going to happen. Oh, wait, they shook it. Ask again later. Oh, man.
I just made a magic 8 ball reference in a class the other day from the time of recording this.
But
how do you and I get out on the same wavelength like this?
I know, that's crazy. But basically, it's ugly looking now. Joel Embiid's causing problems. PG-13 can't stay healthy. They overpaid him. The Clippers are now saying, ha, you go deal with the nonsense. We're not going to deal with it anymore.
The Sixers are probably regretting that extension they gave Joel Embiid.
The Sixers are regretting life right now.
Oof. We did mention bans before. We did mention MLB and gambling before. Well, this is when I believe it was the Padres minor leaguer.
Yes.
Tucupita Marcano or Marcano.
There was a few guys. He was one of them that got caught.
Well, the others were suspended. He was actually banned by Major League Baseball.
Yeah, so this was also stemming from why am I forgetting the Padres star? Who was the Padres star that got suspended for part of the year for the PED scandal?
Tatis?
Yeah. It kind of stemmed a little bit from the organization just because they had a prior situation. And this was also in the Padres organization.
Well, Well, for the sake of the Padres, I will say this: they had a complete turnaround season, where after the trade of Juan Soto to the Yankees and all that the pitching that the Yankees gave them, they really strove for a very strong performance. Obviously, they didn't go all the way, but definitely have to give credit where credit's due to them for making it to. I think they made it to the NLDS.
You know what's ironic? As of this recording, there was reports that the owner who passed away, the one who really liked owning the Padres, not
Yeah.
Preller now, who basically put them in debt or had to borrow $50 million to pay the debt. But he said he would have. There was reports that he never wanted to trade Soto, and he wanted to sign Soto to stay with the Padres.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how much world would be different if
Mhm.
that was still a thing?
Well, that's the thing. I don't know if they, with all the pitching that they got, how much of a benefit that was for them. I don't know if they make it to the playoffs and then give the Dodgers a run for their money in the NLDS.
I guess the world will never know.
Yep. Just like how many licks it takes to get to the Tootsie Roll center of a Tootsie Pop.
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, if we're going to be funny, I mean, I did throw one funny clip in there, and that's me reacting to Darren Waller's music video.
That will be the funniest clip of all time.
Where I refer to Darren Waller as cringe at that point. I'm like,
Well-
you know what? Yeah, it's good. You know what? Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Do you remember when that was a huge signing or trade, whatever it was?
Yeah, because we thought, oh, they have a great pass catcher now, and that he was useless.
The problem is he didn't really catch passes. He was more worried about off the field making music videos.
Yeah. Well, speaking of being worried about stuff going on off the sidelines, the whole McGregor Chandler.
You love this topic.
And by the way, one of the episodes where we talk about this is when Zan was guest hosting with me because you were out for an episode, and the clip actually has the MMA Outsiders stuff. Don't get us wrong, that is not an MMA Outsiders clip.
No, I remember.
Zan and I just invaded the show.
Yes, I remember seeing that actually. But no, and by the way, Tom knows, like, I've actually been following all the McGregor stuff even up to now.
And if you want more of McGregor Chandler talk in the world of MMA, Zan and I are probably going to have later on this month a best of for the MMA Outsiders for the year of 2024, where we'll talk about plenty of that.
Can you just have like a best of part where it's just all of Conor McGregor's stupidity? The problem is you would need like 5 hours to do that.
I was going to say, are we stretching back to the beginning of his career or to his rise in the UFC about a decade ago? Because we need a while.
You could probably span a best of for a year to do that.
Probably. So, but just all that drama. Oh, it's still on for UFC 303, and then it's not.
And then let's see. Oh, Dan Hurley rejecting the Lakers extension.
Which, I mean, good on him. Good on him, because I think it goes back to what we talk about with JJ Redick. That if something goes wrong with this Lakers team, you don't think LeBron's just gonna casually throw the head coach under the bus?
To be honest, it was the worst job in the NBA. The worst head coaching opening in the NBA. Would it have been cool for Dan Hurley to say, hey, I'm the head coach of the Lakers? Yes. But you're going to leave a UConn regime where you've won 2 in a row and you have the chance to three-peat?
The opportunity to have a three-peat. Who can say that?
Well, you have the one rarity, which you and I talked about also, of the Chiefs and UConn three-peating.
I'm just talking about within the college sports world.
But I just meant generally, like you and I talked about the phenomenon of having 2 possible teams three-peating at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I agree with you. Right choice. They were going to pay him more money anyway. He's going to make more money in the long run anyway, just staying at UConn. Let's put it this way. He will never have to pay for a meal ever again in the area of Connecticut. Let's just put it that way.
He's a legend. Speaking of legends, I should have mentioned this when we were talking about the passings in the basketball, but baseball also lost a legend in the world during that span. the legendary Willie Mays passing away.
Say hey, kid. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, 660 career home runs. Obviously, the incredible
And
over-the-shoulder catch.
and
It was
his
before our time, too.
Yeah, before our time, but just always good to look back at baseball's history, and he forever has a place. And unfortunately, he passed away right before they were going to do the game. I think it was
Yes.
at the Giants and the Cardinals at the old Negro League Stadium.
Yes, that's right. And I don't know, like, what bothers me is like when every legend passes away, we're kind of losing the authenticity of baseball a little because we forget what like old fashioned style baseball was like. Now you're getting this new age baseball where like everyone wants to flip bats and well, they want pitch clocks and they want robot umpires and which by the way could be coming soon. Hint, hint. Which I don't know if I'm a huge fan of, but
We get it. You're old.
it's, and I'm only a little bit older than you actually.
Yeah, I know. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese stuff going down during this period. And in addition, the controversy of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese being left off of the Team USA roster for women's basketball at the Olympics.
Yeah, I had a huge problem with this. Like, one, you don't want the rating. You and I discussed that, like, major. NBC doesn't want the ratings? Well, it really wasn't NBC's choice.
Yeah, no, but NBC was definitely pissed off. This actually, the left off Team USA roster part, that was when, again, Zan was co-hosting with me, and Zan had some choice words too. He was like how wrong of a decision it was.
But was this right after she got drafted, Caitlin Clark? I'm trying to remember, because there was some timing issues, like getting into the tryouts, the trial, and
But still, you just mentioned with NBC, you don't want that star power. You don't want
of course you do. But sometimes the brass that runs Olympic things does not always think that way.
But now, fortunately, Team USA won both gold medals, right?
Yes, and
Okay, so
we watched the men's one on playback.
Yes, we did. So fortunately, fortunately, no harm done there. But Caitlin Clark, I don't know, when 4 years comes and they get ready for the 2028 Olympics, she better be on that damn team.
I would hope so. I mean, she's grown way bigger. By the way, the whole Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese thing has grown the WNBA to this massive, massive vehicle now where it's I don't know if I want to say it's no longer under the NBA shadow. I think it will always be under the NBA shadow. And that's not a bad thing. Let me be very clear about that. The NBA, for the longest time, had to carry the WNBA. And I'm not saying that offensively. So any woman who comes after me and says, well, you're being offensive towards the WNBA, I'm not. They had to pay all the expenses for the longest time. Now, the WNBA has its bigger fan base. They have stars that they can relate to. And now they're getting ESPN, Amazon, NBC. They're everywhere. So they're almost a standalone product.
And I will say, again, even before Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese came into the league, Sabrina Ionescu and some of the other stars that came up through this league within the last decade, I have said, you remember the quote that within the social media era of sports, within the last 10, 15 years, there I don't think has been a product that has grown exponentially than the WNBA.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it helps that it started with an SQ. Then you get this phenomenon in Caitlin Clark, which is once in a blue moon. But she's so big that she's getting all the brand deals. It's getting the WNBA exposure. Look, excuse me, look at what the NBA wants to do in the next All-Star festivities. They want to have her and Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu again do the three-point shootout. That was a success in my book.
Very.
Over the stupid dunk contest, which no one wants to compete in.
Well, if you want a stupid story, don't worry. I threw one in there too. The story about Bill Belichick dating supposedly the 24-year-old cheerleader.
Oh, you mean the one that's 50 years younger than he is?
Yeah.
Yeah, you and I, like, by the way, it was one of our, just for behind the scenes, one of our most successful TikTok clips ever.
Yeah, definitely. It was that, and it was Tom Brady and Giselle.
And their
which
divorce.
I think comes up in part 2. I have to double check.
Yeah, I think that's part 2. But, like, you know what? This is part 1 was interesting. Part
Hold
2.
on. Hold
What?
on a minute. You're
What?
forgetting one other thing. You don't want to admit it, but there is one other big clip that ended the first half of the year that had me laughing and had you absolutely miserable.
Which one?
When Mikal Bridges was traded from the Nets to the Knicks.
Well, he's just an idiot. He didn't want to figure it out in Brooklyn. So instead of saying, "Hey, let's work together here to go somewhere," he demanded that he get traded to the Knicks or he's not playing. That's typical NBA star attitude.
Well, I did have the concern. About the Knicks trading. What was it, like 4 first-round picks?
You have it right here. Knicks giving
Yeah.
up four first rounders, which is a lot, but it is what it is. I mean, the Nets, they're not great right now, even though somehow they managed to come back and beat some teams over the beginning of this season so far. But you know what? You have to rebuild to get where you want to get, right?
Mm-hmm. I will give you one thing, though. In a cruel twist of irony, and a cruel twist of, oh, that aged like milk. I say within the context of one of the clips, the Villanova Knicks are complete. Well, that lasted about a couple of months. It didn't even make it to the season.
You know how much I hated that too.
I know you did.
But yeah, go check these clips out. May and June was definitely an interesting 2 months for sure. And it leads into a very interesting halfway point of the year. So check it out. When we come back, we'll wrap up the first half of the year. Holy cow. And we get you kind of into preview mode for the second half of the year. So check it out. We'll be right back with the best of Empty the Bench, part 1. You and I usually say don't reach into the pocket of an athlete, but in this case, I am going to reach into the pocket of the athlete because he's making $29.5 million.
So what is that, like 0.3%?
It's
or
like
3%?
It's 0.3%. It's nothing.
By the way, just for context, the maximum fine that may be imposed by the NBA on a player pursuant to the foregoing shall be $150,000. So it's $50,000 less than the max.
What? $150,000? Even MLB can find more. My opinion has changed since I've had a chance. I don't watch footage on most things. That's not how I process stuff. I might watch clips and things I see, but I actually went back and watched the game footage to see where this happened. This was bad. He was attempting to get this on the court somewhere where it could have hurt somebody. So my answer, and it's going to be a harsh one. He should have been suspended for the rest of the series.
And you know that's not going to happen.
Of course it's not going to happen. Adam Silver is a player's commissioner.
Nick, remember what the new SVP commercial says for I think it's SportsCenter. No, it's for ESPN Bet. It's the playoffs.
Yeah, I get that, but my answer is, what would have the NBA done to Jamal Murray if Anthony Edwards or Karl Anthony Towns got hurt? If that happened?
I'm being honest with you. I don't know what they would have done because Adam Silver is a player's commissioner. We talked about Rashee Rice already a couple of weeks ago with the car accident, the car pileup that happened in Dallas that he was responsible for. I believe there was an SMU player who was also responsible for that, which was actually a teammate of his during his college days. Well, things have only gotten worse for Rashee Rice, who is now being investigated for assault. Allegedly punched a photographer or smacked a photographer in a Dallas nightclub on a Monday night.
Why? This guy does not learn from his mistakes. Is that what we're going to see his whole career? Like, he's just going to keep making mistake after mistake after mistake?
Well, you know what's funny? There was an old scouting report that was actually just dug up on Twitter where at least it mentions at least one NFL club passed on him for the draft last year because they said he's not a good person. He's got behavioral issues.
Okay, but this is the NFL. When has behavior ever been an issue for a scout? Ever?
Well, that was, Vic. I want to shake their hand right now and say, well, you kind of knew something.
True. I agree with what you're saying, but I feel like sometimes you know what you're walking into some of these situations. This whole thing is dumb. And David Zaslav, who is the Warner Brothers Discovery CEO and president, came out over a year ago and said, we don't need the NBA. And like we talked about this on a playback stream the other day. We talked about this on a bunch of things. That makes no sense. The NBA is a cash cow. It makes a ton of money. You can fill slots with games, East Coast, West Coast. You have no issue. Inside the NBA is considered one of the best studio shows all time, period. And that's saying a lot when you have NFL and you have Major League Baseball, some of these shows. Inside the NBA will always be number one all time in my book. I don't care about what's the one on CBS, the NFL CBS, their pregame show.
Oh, football today.
The one with that used to have Boomer Esiason on it. He just left the show, and Sims and Bill Cowher.
The NFL Today, yeah.
Like those two are probably the top all time, but I would take the Inside the NBA further because the chemistry you just don't get with those four. Ernie Johnson deserves a lot of credit keeping those three guys in line. I don't understand why David Zaslav, and you're going to hear the name a lot, basically said, I don't need the NBA. Are you kidding me? It's a huge property. And they're going to claim that they have the NHL and that they just got NASCAR and they have March Madness. Really? Over the NBA? This was a 4-minute rant by Kendrick Perkins. And by the way, you ready for the news flash? He's 100% right.
He is. I mean, look, did Bronny have a good combine? Yes. He still only averaged 4 points a game in college.
4, 4.5, 5, who cares? But my point is, Kendrick Perkins is 100% right. This guy should not be drafted in the first round, or the second round, or the third round, or no rounds.
I mean, there was this talk, could they just put Bronny James in the G League and then have the G League team benefit?
No. This guy is not NBA ready at all. He went for one season, and because he's got the LeBron James name, that's why he's being forced to come out of college after one season. So I agree wholeheartedly with Kendrick Perkins, which is a rarity because Kendrick Perkins is a big loudmouth that sometimes can't control his own mouth. So I agree with what he's saying, and everyone else has got to take a chill pill because his son is not NBA ready.
I saw a tweet earlier on the day we're recording this, and it was a newspaper clipping from when NBC and NBA parted ways last time, as they were leaving for, I think, Turner. And NBC said, essentially, we don't need the NBA. The NBA deal doesn't make sense for us now because now we have NASCAR. 20 years, and I think we're looking in a mirror here.
Yeah, I mean, David Zaslav is probably the dumbest CEO, chairman of a company I've ever seen, and I have no problem standing on that mountain, because I think there's a lot of people who agree with me. NBA is a cash cow. I don't care what people say. I understand rights have gotten expensive, and I was reading a stat that the NBA is now going to be taking in over $7 billion in NBA rights fees over the next 5, 6, 7 years. That's an incredible number. I wouldn't even say this is desperate. I would say like this is sad, like empathetic, and like TNT. You could have kept the NBA. You had there is some murkiness with the whole NBA. Turner had a match option, which is now there's more speculation coming out that they never had it, and it was basically it fell apart. And I mean, this is silly. Inside the NBA was huge. They could, and I started to talk about this last week, that you could have licensed Inside the NBA to another network if they owned it. But I don't know. Long story short, you can't replace Inside the NBA and the NBA on TNT coverage. Now he's claiming this was a, quote, big misunderstanding. This whole thing, Scheffler is saying.
I mean, no, I know. I'm saying, big misunderstanding. I think that's kind of an understatement.
That's the understatement of the century, to be quite honest. Let's see. Jefferson County Attorney Mike O'Connell objected to the continuance of the case because it got delayed. It was supposed to be June 3rd. They basically threw it out to a later date. I don't know how late they threw it out till, but I really don't know what to expect. It says police are also looking into whether Gillies followed protocol during the incident.
Yeah, so there's a lot that we got to figure out. And unfortunately, as of the time we're recording this, we don't have answers.
We don't have answers. My gut is telling me that this is going to get thrown out just because he's the number one golfer in the world. I don't like that things are treated that way, but that's just what I think is going to happen. And the PGA Tour is going to vouch in every way, shape, or form.
And again, it doesn't help that there's no body cam footage.
I mean, that's probably the dumbest mistake I've ever heard in my life. You're stopping someone who big name in professional sports, and you're not taking the footage, knowing that your name is going to be all over the media and the news, saying for the guy you pulled over Scotty Scheffler for doing all this stuff. And by the way, you and I talked about this right after it happened. If it wasn't for Bob Wischusen being like a few minutes late, because for whatever reason, Darlington would not have seen it because he was part of the team that was there covering the event for ESPN, even though I think the whole tournament was on ESPN.
And it's kind of wild. And it's kind of wild that all these circumstances between this and the fog delaying everything to 10 o'clock, Scotty Scheffler actually managed to make tee time. Ended up having the best performance of that day.
What the are the 76ers doing? I mean, the report that actually came out, 100% of the report, was that they were going to overpay Paul George to come to the city of brotherly love. And I said, wait a minute. You already are dealing with one giant ego in Joel Embiid. Now you want to deal with two giant egos with Joel Embiid and Paul George? Really? You couldn't deal with James Harden and Joel Embiid. Now you're going Paul George is a worse player, by the way, than James Harden.
I think PG-13 once was a good player, but he's on the decline.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he was on the secondary LA team, which would be a fact. But
he's on the decline. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong.
Paul George is not the player he once was a few seasons ago.
He's had quite a few injuries over the last couple of years. By the way, I think OKC won that trade by far with the Clippers getting those 5 or 6, or actually it was like 7 or 8. It was 4 first-round picks and 4 pick swaps, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who, by the way, is going to be an MVP candidate for many years to come, on top of some other buyout players that they were able to clear for cap space. I mean, the Clippers got to be freaking kicking themselves right now on that trade. I mean, but going to Philadelphia, going after Paul George, you're pretty much going to cement the fact that you're not planning on winning anytime soon.
One of the most colorful and one of the best kind of personalities that you saw, both on the court as a player, there was times as a world champion player, and off the court as a very memorable commentator for ESPN for a number of years.
He was great with Dave Pasch. Those guys, I think, called Pac-12 games at some point.
Mm-hmm.
They called some college basketball games on ESPN. Let's put it this way. When you find an incredible duo that has chemistry, it lasts for a long time. Those guys called games together for 12 years. 12 years. And there were a lot of people that didn't understand the Bill Walton experience, as I like to call it. And I got it right away. Like, he brought color to the broadcast in a way. He would say things, you'd be like, what's he doing? Or he would, the props. He was kind of the one that started with the props on the broadcast, or dumping popcorn on Dave Pasch's head on National Popcorn Day, or eating the cupcake with the lit candle on it, which I don't know how he didn't hurt himself there. But it's a voice that's missing now that he's not here anymore. Like, there's only one other voice that's really left in that space that when it goes, there's going to be a huge void, and it's Dickie V. The fight has to happen. Otherwise, UFC 303 is going to go up in smoke, like, completely. And if I was reading in the reports that they really
UFC
don't...
303 doesn't
What?
really have that big of a card to like, you can, I guess, technically put an interim title fight tag on the Oldberg-Hill matchup, but that's a far cry from McGregor-Chandler.
Well,
That's a far cry from...
They were also saying that they really don't have a champion replacement to
Right.
put in that place.
I mean, at this point, Nick, like I said, honestly, there were the rumors about Max Holloway, the BMF, potentially stepping in on either side if either side falls out. That would be, it wouldn't be the McGregor Chandler that we've been waiting years for, but it would be, still an entertaining fight that, you can't have Hill versus Oldberg main eventing this card.
Well, the other thing I was reading, I heard that there was a lot on the line in money and the purse for Chandler.
Yeah, because Chandler's been waiting this whole time. He hasn't taken a fight since agreeing to do Ultimate Fighter with Conor. I thought you were going to say on the arena and UFC front. Yes, because there is a rule in Nevada, if the scheduled main event falls out. I forget the time frame context, but if Conor McGregor did not compete in the card, basically the UFC would be forced to offer refunds.
You're talking about tickets.
Yeah.
Well,
Which
I
would
would hope if I paid for a Conor McGregor Michael Chandler ticket that I get my refund, because he's not there.
This story here, this combined with the Jontay Porter update and the Ippei Mizhuara update, I mean, we have a problem in sports. We have a very serious problem going on right now, because when you're talking about two athletes in two separate of the big four leagues getting the lifetime banishments, like you said, the last time we could really think of this was Pete Rose, almost 35 years ago now.
1989.
This 1989, 35 years. This is concerning. Like, this is, I mean, look, we can talk about how stupid that these guys are for being willing to throw games, or the way that they had, or the way that they were betting on their own sport. I mean, granted, the minor leaguers, they're only getting the 1 year ban. It was less than $1,000, but regardless, I mean, it was a far cry from what Marcano did, but Marcano, it's still bad. And of course, Ippei with the whole account getting into Shohei's account thing. Like, look, one way or another, this is representing a big problem that we have in modern sports right now. And unfortunately, I don't know if there's an easy way out of this, Nick, when you're looking at all four of these major league sports and all the different sports channels, and everything is betting content. The term you like to use, that they're all in bed with the gambling companies.
Yeah. I mean, this is a massive problem in professional sports where we're connected with the DraftKings and the FanDuels of the world, that we're dealing with all these gambling companies. The NFL is probably the biggest offender when it comes to the gambling companies, because they have all these ad deals that you see all over TV, or if you're listening to Sirius satellite radio and you hear the ads during the games, or on
Oh, I
ESPN
mean,
you
even
hear it.
just I was gonna say, even on just ESPN with the ESPN bet. Cringe. What the hell are you doing? I never want to hear you sing again. And look, I was very happy when we got you last season, but if this is gonna be the way that you are, please retire. The Giants drafted a tight end. The Giants actually, one of their picks, they drafted a tight end because they were concerned that Waller would retire. How can it be June and we still don't have any idea if he's going to retire or not?
I mean, one answer I would give for that is
Emotional damage.
I feel like it might have been more. It might have been more suitable for Waller. I should say, it might have been. I don't know. Would this have been worse if instead of releasing his own music video and his own song, he did a cover of what's that song by Drake, Hotline Bling? You used to call me on the phone.
that would be great, actually. But when I saw this come out and I heard some of the horrible auto tuning that was done by Darren Waller. By the way, stick to your career
T-Pain,
with
you
football.
are not.
Stick to football. You're better off. I just couldn't believe it. And I think Kelsey Plum is a social media influencer that he was married to. Shocker. But Darren Waller needs to go away. Just go away, retire, move on. You've probably made enough money in your career anyway, I'm assuming. The NFL's passed him by. Like, just he's turned into Odell Beckham.
I don't know if I would say the NFL's passing by. He was hurt last season, but I mean, Nick, given what we know of New York athletes and give what the New York media, this is not a good sign. This is a sign of bad direction, abandoned ship.
I'm just gonna be blunt. I'm gonna say it again. I may be being repetitive here, but it's truly how I feel. You know, there's been all this talk about the WNBA and growing the game and the new stars that are in the game, from Angel Reese to Cardozo to Caitlin Clark and several others. Marina Mabry being another one who also plays for the Sky, and a couple others. And my point in saying it is, if you want to grow this game, you have to have stars that are marketable. And Caitlin Clark is the definition of it. He has millions of social media followers across, I believe, 4 different platforms. She's a polarizing figure to some people like her, some people don't. But what people respect is the way she plays basketball. And what's truly disappointing to me, and where I think Team USA is missing the mark, and I totally understand that they want the 12 best players that they can to win the Olympics. That's everybody's goal, right? But if you want everybody in the world to win it, if you want the Olympics to be the most global event in the world for a month's time, there is no bigger star in professional sports on the female side at this very second in time than Caitlin Clark herself. So for Team USA to write a canned PR statement, pretty much saying that we did what was in the best interest of the team and we decided to only pick the 12 best players, is to me the biggest bunch of baloney ever. And that should serve as extra motivation for Caitlin Clark to come back next year, be the best player in the entire league, and prove that by 2028 she deserves to be on an Olympic team of some kind. Because to me, it was an absolute ball drop, no pun intended, by Team USA to let this happen, and they did. College basketball coaches, especially ones like him, deserve to stay in college. He's definitely a player's coach, and he's definitely a college coach. I don't think he would have fit well in the NBA system. I think he has a very specific method to his madness, and seeing him walk in rare form in person in the national championship game led me to believe that, as I was watching it, that he would be stupid to leave the UConn Huskies. So I'm very glad for the UConn fan base and for himself and for everybody involved in the Big East that he's going to stay because UConn can still be the premier team in that conference. And given the pieces that they have coming back and given what he might be able to work in the transfer portal, this team should be very good for years to come. So UConn fans can finally rejoice, which is a good thing.
Number one, you're going to be pursuing history by trying to become a 3-time back-to-back men's college basketball national champion as a head coach. Number two, I don't know if Dan Hurley, like you said, would have been really a good fit with the kind of system that the Lakers have, and what Dan Hurley runs. Number three, also for number two, by the way, it's also kind of asinine that he would get this kind of contract with what he's doing in college basketball, and he's never coached an NBA game. Third of all, look, if Dan Hurley went over to the Lakers and he was their coach, Nick and I have talked, Zan, for a while about how the NBA is a player-run, player-driven league, in spite of the fact that their coaches, general managers.
For sure, it's star-driven, it's player-driven, 1,000%. Please continue.
So if you've been following the news of what's going on with the Lakers as one of two potential teams to potentially draft Bronny, and the talk that maybe they will draft Bronny as a means of trying to lure LeBron back to LA, Dan Hurley would have basically no power. And if LeBron is there, and things are a disaster, Dan Hurley could be out of a job rather quickly. As UConn, at least because of all of his success, he has stability. Just over 25,000 points. He averaged 27 points a game in his career, 5,366 rebounds, 6,238 assists, and he actually has a Pan American gold medal. He was a 1960 Olympic gold medalist, in the Basketball Hall of Fame as a player, College Basketball Hall of Fame. One of the greatest minds that basketball has ever seen.
Oh, 1,000,000%. And just to see the outpouring of tributes coming in from people in the basketball world, people outside of the basketball world, people in the entertainment world. He was very well beloved for everything that he did. Even though it's very sad that he passed away, he did live a full and fulfilling life, and for him to do it in the middle of the NBA Finals, in my humble opinion, is very, very fitting. So I wish his family and everybody wanted my sincerest condolences, and anyone who liked him from a basketball perspective, or even as a human interest perspective, because he was a fantastic interview. He will definitely be sorely missed.
As you kind of mentioned, everyone's outpouring of support shows you just the kind of influence that he had on NBA figures. And I know there had been talk, years ago, Zan, of maybe maybe the NBA should get some sort of new logo, maybe one based on MJ or based on Kobe or based on LeBron. But I don't think any sort of logo can beat the Jerry West based logo that we see, that we've known all our lives, at the very least, with the NBA. If Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler does not happen, this is not a good card at all.
It's not good at all.
Especially, Zan, when you've got International Fight Week, you have UFC X, you have the Hall of Fame. Like, this is. I have described International Fight Week, Zan, and the card that goes along with it on this show with Nick. I have described it as basically the UFC's WrestleMania. And if you're going to if you're going to put all of your eggs in Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler, like, I get why the UFC, well, I shouldn't even say the UFC, why Endeavor or WMEIMG made that decision, because McGregor and Chandler, Helwani has talked about this months ago. They wanted UFC 300, but the business people said, look, UFC 300 is going to be bought because it's such a big, milestone of a card, and they stack that with talent. UFC 303, which could be a weaker card, we have let's put International Fight Week there. Let's put McGregor and Chandler on there so we can build that up into a big card. But now, if all the eggs are in McGregor and the McGregor basketballs, you got nothing.
A 72-year-old Bill Belichick is dating a 24-year-old cheerleader.
What?
Yeah. Do it again.
What?
Oh, God.
apparently Bill Belichick is dating somebody like 50 years younger than him, and apparently these two met. She's schooling, and apparently, what did you say? It was like a philosophy project?
They bonded over a philosophy project that she was doing for homework.
Philosophy. And I'm assuming it's not football philosophy.
No, it's not. It's just philosophy homework. She also was in cheerleading competitions, and apparently he was showing up and like cheering her on at her cheerleading competition. And I was just like, what is going? This is like a creepy father going and watching his kid compete in a contest. Oh wait, it's not father-daughter, it's boyfriend and girlfriend. Angel Reese is the definition of a bad villain in sports. Basically, she acts like the tough person. She's going to say all the mean, horrible things. And then when stuff goes against her, she cries about it and complains. And like the quotes of her after the game where she said, oh, well, Caitlin Clark gets a special whistle for playing for her foul calls. And it's just like, come on, man. You're going to say she gets everyone of all the stars get special foul calls in the game. Look at LeBron for his whole career in the NBA. Gets every call. He flops and he gets a foul call. Okay?
I mean, it's not right, for somebody to have a special foul call, but one is reality, and two, at the same time, you see what happens with Caitlin Clark. You see the fouls that come against her. They've been rough, at least rougher than normal fouls that you see in the WNBA.
Yeah, and here's the other issue. Every other WNBA player is jealous of Caitlin Clark in every way, shape, or form. And people can say, but Nick, what do you mean they're jealous? Yes, they're jealous because they're not getting the attention that she gets. First of all, they should be thanking their lucky stars that the WNBA is getting as much attention as it is because she's bringing the attention to the sport.
One of the greatest baseball players to have ever played this game, passing away just a couple of days ago at the age of 93. His final stats, 301 batting average, 3,293 hits, 660 home runs. One of the only players, there's only a handful to get the 3,000 hit and 600 plus home run mark. He did that. Plus, just over 1,900 RBIs and 339 stolen bases. Helped lead the then New York Giants, yes, not the football team, but the Giants before they were in San Francisco, to a World Series championship in 1954. 24-time All-Star. 24 All-Star appearances for number 24.
Is that all years? Is that all years for him?
Yes, I believe this was part of it was in the era when there were 2 All-Star games in a year.
That's right. I actually remember reading about that as well.
It was like in the 50s and 60s, or there was just the 50s. I don't know. There was like 2 All-Star games in a year.
I mean, the Incredibles, obviously Hall of Famer. That's no doubt. 2-time MVP, 12-time Gold Glove. Now, let me point out something.
He's one of the greatest fielders ever. If you ever watch him play the field, you ever see those old school highlights.
Wait a minute. The catch. The catch. You're never going to see a guy like this in baseball again, where he plays amazing defense, hits well, hits for average, by the way, also, which you don't see in today's game anymore. Mm-hmm. Average 300 his whole career.
Yeah.
You don't see that anymore.
That the Villanova Knicks are now complete. Mikal Bridges is now officially a New York Knick. Am I happy to have Mikal Bridges? Yes.
You should be. He's a really good player.
But 5 first-round picks?
Well, okay, so I'll give you some context on this. I was talking to Nick D about this just because he was asking me about it. I think the Knicks, because it's crosstown rival, had to pay more to get the trade to go down.
I understand, but I'm also going to tell you that at the same time, let's play
I know we talk fallacy of a predetermined outcome. But
If you're asking, it's an overpay. It is.
It is an overpay. But the thing that kills it, sometimes I'm not mad about an overpay. But let's put in some context, or let's put in a little situation here. Even though fallacy of a predetermined outcome, do I think a New York Knicks team with Mikal Bridges and was healthy, not having the injuries, could they have beaten the Pacers in Game 7? Yes.
Yeah.
But I don't think the acquisition of Mikal Bridges alone makes them a better team than the Boston Celtics. I think I think the Knicks are still a second fiddle in the Eastern Conference, even with this trade.
They're making these moves and doing all this movement because they claim that they're being competitive with the Boston Celtics.
Well, I was going to ask. So is this an all-in move?
To them, it's an all-in move.
I know this season, and I guess this is where you're going to have your frustration. I know the season did not go as planned. But you had Mikal Bridges kind of as the centerpiece of this team to build around, and now
I was ecstatic.
You were basically hitting reset now.
Right, but I was ecstatic when I heard we got Mikal Bridges. Like he was a really good player for the Suns.
No, that's my point, is that you got Mikal Bridges, you were ecstatic. It looked like he was going to be the centerpiece that everything was going to be built around, and now what did the Nets just do? They went up to their game console and they hit reset.
Now, but here's the problem, though. Part of what you said earlier, which is that he was going to go and demand a trade anyway. The reverse to that, I would say, is why didn't you convince him that the Nets were a good place to build and be the cornerstone piece? That's what I don't understand here. You ship him away. Basically, the Nets are pulling a Utah Jazz right now. Where, who's the GM? The former Celtic, Danny Ainge. Danny Ainge, who's now the GM of the Jazz, is basically stocking draft room capital. And not... So when he traded Donovan Mitchell, he traded Rudy Gobert and got like 12 draft picks and is doing nothing with it, really, now. The Nets are doing the same thing. Let's just keep the draft capital. Draft picks, there's really only two things you can do with it. Either you have to be in the lottery and you get a high pick, or you have to trade it and get somebody to come to New York, Brooklyn, to play.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this little look back into the first half of the year that was 2024. It's amazing to always see what has happened over the course of a year in sports. All the highs, all the lows, everything that has happened within the news. The year is basically come and gone. Next week, Nick, is Christmas, one of the best times of the year. And we will look back at the second half of the year as we begin our countdown to 2025.
Wait a minute. Is that when we wear the goofy Christmas hats and we get all festive-y?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got to go dig that out somewhere.
I know. So do I. But once again, hit that like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified of everything here at the Empty the Bench Podcast Network. Again, youtube.com/ETB Network. If you are listening on the audio end, go check us out. Hit the subscribe button. Help us continue our climb to 1,000 subscribers. And for those who are watching on the video end, obviously listen to Empty the Bench wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to follow us across social media at ETB Sports, at ETB Network. Shout out to our friends over at Playback for everything that they do sponsoring the network. And check out all of our streams, all of our content from the NBA to Fight Study, so much more. Nick, like I said, enjoyable look back at the first half of the year, and there's still more to look back at the year that was 2024.
Yeah, it only gets goofier and angrier and opinionated. So I'm sure whatever you find in part 2, and I mean, you're good at finding the clips. I leave you to that. Like, you're going to find some of like my angriest opinionist moments, some that are so outrageous out of right field. Like, people are going to be like, wait, you said that? And I'm going to say, oh, wait, did I say that? And I don't remember saying it. So, yeah, just look forward to part 2. That comes up on Christmas
Day.
Oh, boy. So you get to unwrap the present of part 2 on Christmas Day. Holy moly, that's going to be very interesting.
Yep. so you can enjoy your eggnog, enjoy your presents, and then at Christmas night, listen to part 2 or watch part 2 of the best of Empty the Bench 2024. But until then, that's Nick Morgasen. I'm Tom Albano. We'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the holiday season.
Take care, everybody. Have a good holiday season.